There comes a point in every person's life when comfort begins to rot. You start to feel the weight of illusions, the soft lies you were taught to believe since childhood, the ones that whisper, good things happen to good people. Hard work always pays off. The world is fair. But as you grow older, as the scars multiply and silence grows heavier, you realize that those promises were never rules. They were wishes. And wishes, no matter how beautiful, don't survive reality for long. The truth is not warm. It doesn't hug you or reassure you. It cuts. It exposes. It forces you to see the world without filters. And that's why most people avoid it. They'd rather stay wrapped in illusions, living in a dream that feels safe, than wake up to a reality that demands strength. But for those who choose to wake up, something incredible happens. Life stops being a random series of disappointments and starts becoming a training ground. Every betrayal, every loss, every failure stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like instruction. You begin to understand that reality isn't cruel, it's honest. And if you can handle its honesty, you can handle anything. The ancient Stoics lived by this principle. They didn't romanticize pain, but they didn't run from it either. They faced life head-on, without complaint, without denial, because they understood that the only way to conquer chaos is to stop pretending it doesn't exist. They taught that freedom begins when you stop negotiating with lies. And the first negotiation most people make is with themselves. The deal that says, if I just work hard, if I stay nice, if I do everything right, life will reward me. But life doesn't make deals. It mirrors your strength, not your wishes. And to see this clearly, you need to burn away every comforting illusion until only truth remains. That's what these 8 lessons are. They aren't meant to make you feel good. They're meant to make you strong. The kind of strong that doesn't crumble when life stops playing fair. The kind of strong that can't be manipulated by charm, guilt, or fear. The kind that makes you dangerously smart. Not because you know everything, but because you finally see things for what they really are. If you're ready to stop hiding behind comforting lies, and if you're ready to face the truths most people never dare to confront, then you're in the right place. So take a breath, let go of everything you think you know, and let's begin. For centuries, humans have loved to believe they are rational creatures. We like to think that every choice we make is guided by reason, that we weigh the facts, consider the pros and cons, and then make smart, calculated decisions. But if that were true, the world would look very different. The reality is that most of our choices are emotional first, logical second. The reasoning comes after, not before. We don't buy things because we need them. We buy them because they make us feel something. We don't fall in love because it's practical. We fall because it fills a void. We don't argue because we care about truth. We argue because we need to feel right. Emotion is the current beneath every human action. Logic is just the explanation we build afterward to make our choices sound noble. That doesn't make emotion bad. In fact, it's what gives life color and meaning. But when emotion goes unchecked, it becomes the reason people destroy relationships, sabotage opportunities, and repeat the same mistakes again and again. Think about the last time you made a decision you regretted. Maybe you sent a message in anger, bought something you couldn't afford, or trusted someone you shouldn't have. You probably told yourself you were acting logically, but deep down it was emotion steering the wheel. The Stoics understood this long before psychology existed. They saw that emotion isn't the enemy, impulsiveness is. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. What he meant was simple. You cannot control what you feel, but you can control what you do next. That's the difference between emotional chaos and emotional intelligence. People who are ruled by emotion react instantly. They lash out, give in, withdraw, or explode. People who master emotion still feel everything, but they pause before they act. That pause is everything. It's the space between stimulus and response, the brief silence where power lives.
In that silence, you decide who you want to be. Will you let your feelings control you, or will you use them as information to make a better move? Most people never develop that skill. They believe that following your heart is always noble, even when it leads them into disaster. But wisdom means knowing that feelings are not facts. They're signals, temporary, shifting, and often misleading. If you treat every feeling as truth, you'll live in constant reaction to things you don't understand. To become mentally strong, you must learn to observe your emotions without obeying them. Ask yourself, why do I feel this way? What triggered it? What outcome do I actually want? That self-questioning turns emotion into insight instead of chaos. And when you begin to observe emotion, in yourself and in others, you'll start to see the hidden structure of human behavior. In conflict, people aren't defending logic, they're defending pride. When someone argues louder, it's rarely because they have better evidence. It's because they feel unheard or disrespected. When someone acts cold, it's not always indifference. Sometimes it's fear in disguise. Once you can see these patterns, you stop wasting energy trying to win arguments or prove points. You stop reacting to tone and start listening to motive. That's when you gain control. Because here's the secret. Understanding emotion doesn't just help you manage yourself, it helps you navigate everyone else. It lets you step out of the storm while everyone else is still trying to fight the wind. If someone yells, you stay calm. If someone manipulates, you recognize it instantly. If someone tries to provoke you, you smile because you already understand what's driving them. That is emotional mastery. It's not about being numb, it's about being aware. You feel everything, but you're moved by nothing you don't choose to be moved by. Once you reach that level, people can't easily control you. They can't guilt you, scare you, or bait you into impulsive choices. You start operating from clarity, not chaos. And that's what makes you powerful. Not in a loud, aggressive way, but in a quiet, unshakable way. This transforms the way you deal with life. You no longer waste energy reacting to every mood or insult. You stop letting temporary emotions make permanent decisions. And slowly, you begin to notice that your mind feels cleaner, lighter, like a room finally cleared of clutter. That's what the Stoics trained for, not coldness, but clarity. Because when you master your emotional landscape, you stop being a prisoner to your impulses and start becoming the architect of your actions. So the first ruthless lesson is this. People are not driven by logic. They are driven by emotion, by fear, by pride, by love, by insecurity, by the hunger to be seen. But the few who learn to understand those emotions, in themselves and in others, begin to move differently. They stop fighting the waves and start surfing them. That's when your intelligence becomes dangerous. Because now, you're not just reacting to life, you're directing it. People often talk about kindness as if it's a pure thing, an act untouched by personal desire. But look a little closer, and you'll see something deeper at play. Every human choice, from the grandest sacrifice to the smallest favor, carries a trace of self-interest. It might be comfort, it might be pride, it might be the need to be seen as good. But there is always something the person gains, some emotional currency that makes the action worthwhile to them. This doesn't make humanity corrupt. It makes it understandable.
The idea that people should act without any self-interest sounds noble, yet it ignores how the mind actually works. We move toward pleasure and away from pain. We seek belonging, recognition, or peace. Every instinct, even the ones that seem altruistic, is wired around survival of body, mind, or identity. Imagine you're helping a friend through a hard time. Yes, you care about them, but you also help because it aligns with who you believe yourself to be. You want to live in a world where loyalty matters, where compassion still exists. So you act according to that belief, and it reinforces your sense of integrity. That reinforcement is the hidden reward. Now think of the times someone disappointed you. Maybe they backed out of a promise, or didn't return a favor, or suddenly changed once their needs were met. You felt hurt because you believed they were acting selflessly. But in truth, they were acting according to their own internal logic, just like you do. Their priorities shifted and their behavior followed. Once you understand this, life starts making sense. Disappointment fades, replaced by clarity. You stop taking betrayal personally because you realize it was never about you. It was about what they needed in that moment. This awareness is not meant to turn you into a cynic. Cynicism says, people are selfish, so trust no one. Wisdom says, people act from self-interest, so learn to see it and work with it. That difference is everything. Because when you accept that everyone, including you, is motivated by personal benefit, you gain the power to navigate relationships with strategy instead of naivety. Let's take an example. Someone gives you advice that feels generous and insightful. But ask yourself, what do they gain if you follow it? Maybe they'll feel validated for being right. Maybe they're building a subtle form of influence. Maybe they simply want to see you succeed because your success affirms their own worldview. Whatever the motive, it's rarely free of self-interest, and that's okay. When you stop demanding purity from people, you stop being disappointed by their humanity. You learn to collaborate with it instead. The Stoics were masters at this kind of clear seeing. They didn't assume the world owed them fairness or virtue. They observed human behavior without judgment, like scientists watching the tides. They knew that understanding motives was not about manipulation, it was about alignment. If someone seeks power, you don't shame them for it. You decide whether your goals can coexist with theirs. If someone seeks comfort, you decide whether you are willing to provide it in exchange for something you value. This is not coldness, it's awareness. You stop playing emotional chess blindfolded. Carl Jung once wrote that everything which irritates us in others can lead us to understanding ourselves. The things we dislike in people are often reflections of drives we haven't owned within us. When you recognize the self-interest in others, you also begin to see your own more clearly. Maybe you get angry when someone takes credit for your work. Why? Because your self-interest, your desire for recognition, was challenged. Maybe you feel betrayed when a friend grows distant. Why? Because your self-interest, your need for closeness, wasn't met. When you start analyzing these emotions, not with blame, but with curiosity, you begin to understand the architecture of your mind. You start to see that self-interest is not a flaw, but a compass. It shows you what you value, what you fear, what you're willing to fight for. The danger lies not in having self-interest, but in pretending you don't. Denial breeds confusion. Honesty breeds control. Once you own your motives, you can align them with your values. You can choose paths where your self-interest also creates value for others. That's the foundation of every lasting partnership, every strong team, every real friendship. It's the alignment of benefit, not the illusion of selflessness. In practical life, this understanding saves you endless frustration. At work, you stop expecting loyalty from colleagues whose incentives push them elsewhere. In relationships, you stop demanding unconditional support from people who are fighting their own private battles. You start to read reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. And something fascinating happens when you do this. You become calmer. Disappointment loses its sting because expectation loses its power. You see through flattery, through guilt, through emotional games, not with bitterness, but with quiet comprehension. Imagine standing in a crowded room where everyone is speaking, bargaining, performing. You're the only one listening between the words, noticing the subtle exchanges of validation and need. That's what awareness feels like. You no longer need to shout. You simply understand. This is the second ruthless lesson. Everyone acts in their own self-interest, not because people are evil, but because they're human, because survival, whether physical, emotional, or social, requires it. The moment you stop fighting this truth, you become free from resentment. And when you start working with it instead of against it, you become influential. Because while most people are still reacting to motives they can't see, you'll be several moves ahead, calm and precise. It's not manipulation. It's awareness refined into strategy. And awareness, when practiced long enough, becomes wisdom. There's a reason mirrors make people uneasy. Not because of what they show, but because of what they reveal when you look too long. Most people can't face their reflection without quickly turning away. They don't want to meet the version of themselves that hides beneath reputation and routine. Human beings crave stories more than accuracy. Each of us builds a private narrative. I'm a good person. I'm doing my best. I know who I am. That story keeps the world predictable. It keeps the ego safe. But the moment truth walks in, the story trembles.
The truth isn't polite. It doesn't care about your comfort, your excuses, or the hours you've spent defending an image. It stands there, silent and unwavering, until you acknowledge it. When someone points out a flaw you've ignored, your body reacts like it's under attack. Your heart races. Your mind scrambles for defense. You justify, you explain, you deflect, anything to protect the identity you built. That's not weakness, that's biology. The brain treats ego threats like survival threats. But growth begins the moment you resist that reflex. When you can sit in discomfort long enough to ask, "Is this true?" instead of, "How do I escape this?" that's when transformation starts. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily. He would write pages of brutal self-analysis. No audience, no applause, just truth. He listed his flaws, his anger, his pride, his distractions, not to punish himself, but to refine himself. He knew that honesty is a form of strength training. Most people never reach that stage. They prefer echo chambers over mirrors, friends who agree, feeds that flatter, jobs that distract. But the more you hide from truth, the more it owns you. Denial doesn't erase weakness, it preserves it. Real maturity is measured by how much truth you can tolerate without running. When someone criticizes you, can you listen without collapsing? When life exposes your limits, can you accept them without shame? When you notice a recurring failure, can you analyze it without self-hate? This is what self-awareness looks like in practice. Not constant confidence, but constant curiosity. You stop asking, "How can I prove I'm right?" and start asking, "What am I missing?" That question alone separates wisdom from ignorance. Because while pride argues, truth investigates. Think of truth as fire. If you touch it carelessly, it burns. But if you learn to stand near it, it forges you. It melts the false layers until only what's solid remains. Every person who has ever grown beyond mediocrity has faced this fire. They've felt the sting of self-honesty and stayed with it. They've chosen reflection over distraction, humility over validation. And that choice, repeated enough times, builds an unshakable mind. So, the third ruthless lesson is this. Most people can't handle the truth about themselves. Not because they're weak, but because they confuse criticism with rejection. They haven't learned the truth isn't an enemy. It's a mirror that shows the path forward. The day you stop fearing your reflection is the day you stop being controlled by it. You become adaptable, open, and hard to offend. Because there's nothing left inside you that truth can destroy, only things it can refine.